Welcome back to another episode of the Guides Podcast. I'm Keaton, and this is.
I'm Kyle.
But first, a word from our partners. Kyle, you want to kick us off?
For sure. So first off, we want to talk about Heather's Choice and the affiliate that we are with them. If you use the link that is down in our show notes to access the Heather's Choice website, you can get 10% off of any of the Heather's Choice products. Or if you use our code, the Young Guides 10, that's the Young Guides 10. At checkout, you can get yourself a little discount. We got dinners, we got breakfasts, we got packaroons. Again, we got our 4 seasonal flavors of packaroons. We have candy cane, we have Santa's Coal, we have ginger snap, and we have eggnog. And those aren't going to last super long. Today is December 1st. They're great stocking stuffers. I would highly suggest picking yourself up some packaroons. We have a lot in stock right now. Get them while you can before everything gets sold out for the holidays. I can't say enough good things about Heather's Choice food. It's good for you. It tastes good, and it's great for your next outdoor adventure. So again, Heather's Choice, the link to that website with our code is in the show notes below. So check it out. Keaton, what do you got?
All right. We are very excited to bring a new partner on this week, Lucky Bug Lures. Check out Lucky Bugs Lures Instagram. They're the creator of the Bingo Bug, Zombie Max, Fusion Extreme, Lucky Plug, F-Bomb, and Pike Bomb. You can check out all these lures at www.luckybuglures.com. Go on their Instagram, check it out. They got stuff all the way from lake trout fishing, pike fishing, bass fishing. I mean, all their lures catch a little bit of everything. So make sure to check it out. You can save 15% at checkout with the Young Guides 15 as a promo code. Once again, the Young Guides 15. Go on their website at the end. You'll be able to check out and put in the code, the Young Guides 15, and save yourself 15%. We hope you enjoy these two. And let's keep on rolling, Kyle.
Yeah, and for sure. And real quick about the Lucky Bug again, this is a new partner of ours, and I'm actually super stoked to try out some of their gear, the 2022 season, maybe even some this winter if I'm able to get out for the end of the year and fish for pike to the ice. I definitely think some of their gear is going to be great for potential pike fishing this winter and into next year. I didn't do a lot of pike fishing in 2021, and I'd like to do a little more. And I think looking at some of their crankbaits, some of their lures, I think they'd be really good for playing around up here in Alaska, trying to figure out some of those new species. And I'm sure some of those things would crush salmon and some of the trout in the rivers that I guide too. So definitely something I'm excited to check out next year.
Yep. And they got, I mean, I've been looking at them. I've been looking specifically at like their plugs for bass. And I know that, down here we catch them occasionally, some coho on the plugs too. So really excited to give those a shot this upcoming summer and fall. And we hope that you get some use out of it too. Awesome.
For sure. All right. Well, let's get to the podcast that we're introing for today. Keaton, why don't you tell us about this new episode?
Yeah, so the previous episodes, me and Kyle, it's either been about us or we've been bringing on fishing guides. So this week we decided we wanted to mix it up. We're bringing a good friend of ours on, Mark. He has the Fly Fishing Filmmaker on Instagram. You should give him a follow. He does some awesome stuff. I think I've seen him on the Orvis Moment of Chill, right, Kyle? Or what is that? The Orvis.
It's a Friday Film Festival
The Friday Film Festival. He was on that. And then he puts a lot of his videos on YouTube. He also talks a little bit about his kind of new Facebook group, and I'm actually in it, and he posts some really good stuff, good tips on how to get like good shots, how to set up. So me and Kyle are very excited to have Mark on, and we hope that you get the same satisfaction that me and Kyle did from talking to Mark. Kyle, you got anything to add on?
Yeah, I've been chatting with Mark on and off for the last few years, ever since I found him on, I believe I found him on Facebook, the Fly Fishing in Washington Facebook group, talking to him about some of the local rivers, about filming and all this kind of stuff. So it's been really cool to actually sit down, Keaton and I, with Mark and just talk to him about how he breaks down his filming and fly fishing and just filming in general, his editing. Oh, super cool. It was super cool to talk to him. And tonight, actually, before Keaton and I hopped on to record, my wife and I were watching some of Mark's stuff going back at his beginning, like when he first started filming fly fishing videos to where he's at now. And it's really cool to see that growth over the last few years. And like his latest one, that's, you guys gotta go check out his YouTube channel. I believe it's under Fly Fishing Filmmaker as his YouTube channel. If you type in Mark Steudel, you'll find him on YouTube. His latest video, I'm pretty sure that was on the, I don't know if I should say the name of the river.
I wouldn't say it, but
yeah, I can say the name, but
yeah,
it's
a well-known river in Washington. So
is it in Washington or is that one in Idaho?
Oh, I don't know if you, well, we kind of, I don't know.
It was on. There's a lot of rivers in Washington and Idaho.
One of those that is somewhere on that side over that way. So
yeah, all 5 of our listeners might go fish that river now.
Sorry, Mark.
Anyway, so super cool video, sick drone shots. He's got a 360 camera. He's got really high quality cameras, rowing down the river in a water master. Sick video, but check it out. Watch all of his videos. Follow him on Instagram. Super cool dude. And if you are part of that fly fishing in Washington Facebook group, I believe Mark is a admin on there, right?
Yeah, with me and Jim.
Yeah. So they are. But you're a moderator on there?
Yeah.
On Fly Fishing in Washington?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'll have to explain it sometime.
Bro, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. It's dangerous. I'm just kidding. No, it's good.
How long have you been an admin?
For like 6 months.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I got a lot of connections, Kyle. What can I say?
That's cool, dude. I didn't know you were on Fly Fishing in Washington.
Yeah, and I also have my my little page, Urban Fly Fishing in Washington.
Dude, so I was thinking about that today. I'm getting a little off topic.
Okay.
What I really want to do is I want to help with that, or like put more stuff on that page with the urban fly fishing in Anchorage.
Yeah, do it.
People catch trout and coho like in downtown Anchorage, like with traffic driving over them. So
that's perfect. Well, we'll have to link up and not bore the people to death about our conversation. Maybe you can talk about urban fisheries on an upcoming podcast. Stay tuned.
You never know.
Never know. No, just right before we hit our exit button here, I just want to come back at you guys. Anyone listening or taking the time to listen to our podcast, me and Kyle really appreciate it. I'm saying this from the heart. I mean, I pour it out every time. You guys are awesome. We've got endless support from not only friends, but we've had strangers, people reaching out to us. We're, working on partners and we're just young people. We may not know everything, but we're going to share what we know, and we're going to try to bring on people that know it better than us and give you good information. And hopefully we can learn something new, maybe try a new fishery out. So I just really want to thank you guys for taking the time, and we really hope that this upcoming podcast you enjoy. And more to come. So if you can, make sure to go on Apple Podcasts and subscribe and leave a comment. What do you call that, Kyle?
A rating and a review. It helps us.
A rating and review. I'm not the tech guy. I just show up on Wednesdays and Thursday nights for Kyle. So word from our IT department.
Oh yeah, ratings and reviews help us show up on the algorithms. It shows us, mainly it's for us to see that we have support. You guys are listening to us. You like what we hear, or you like what you hear, what we say. Let us know what we're doing good. Let us know what we're doing bad. Tell us things you want to hear. Tell us things you don't want to hear. Any feedback is good. We appreciate it. If you hate us, let us know. Just don't give us a rating.
Just leave us a rating. One more thing, I just want to let you guys know that you should check out our Instagram, the Young Guides Podcast. You can check us out at www.theyoungguidespodcast.com. You can listen to our podcast for free there. You also can check out previous guests we've had on. I try to stay up to date on it. When we bring a guest on, we leave a little bio. And if they're a guide, we leave their guide information on there too. And then you can check out our partners on there, and you can learn a little bit about me and Kyle too. So check out that. We're on a bunch of social media and platforms now. We're trying to grow, and this is just, we're still in the basement, but we're getting to it. So once again, I can't say it enough. I appreciate you guys so much.
Can't say it better. I just really appreciate you guys. I appreciate Keaton keeping me accountable. I think we keep each other accountable. Bringing on good guests. Keaton lines a lot of that up, and he's finding some really good folks. If you guys stay tuned in the future, we're going to get guests just like Mark on here. We're going to have these great podcasts, great episodes for you guys to listen to the next time you're on your way to the water, maybe the next time you're on your way to work, you're at the gym, your time flies, wherever you're listening to us, we're going to bring you good content. Yep. Keaton has a lot to do with that. He sets those guys up.
We'll have some from the small guys to the big guys. So stay tuned. We got some exciting ones, hopefully coming on in 2022. Man, that's crazy. It's right there. So, but yeah, anything else to add, Kyle?
Let's quit rambling. Let's get to the episode.
All right, here we go. Ready or not, let's roll.
Let's roll.
Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. I'm Keaton, and
I'm Kyle.
And we're bringing at you a pretty interesting one. We're stepping away from the guide collection, and we're going into a different part of fly fishing. Mark Steudel is going to be our guest today. Did I say that right, Mark?
Close. It's actually Steudel. Yeah, but I've heard that so many times, so it's all right.
Sorry about that. So we slaughtered.
Way to go, Keaton. Way to start it off.
Way to go. Way to start it off.
The gate. Our test.
So, Steudel, Mark Steudel is now on our podcast. We're going to be learning about some filmmaking. He does fly fishing videos. He's on Fly Fishing Washington. That's actually how I met Mark. So without further ado, here's Mark Steudel.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. This is great. I'm excited to talk about fly fishing and filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have you on. And once again, let's just get started right out of the bat. Kind of tell us about your background.
Yeah, so I was lucky. I grew up in a family that the outdoors was pretty important to them. And I grew up, every summer taking lots of sea kayaking trips up into BC. And they weren't really focused around fishing, though my brother was really into fishing. So we'd fish for salmon and bottom fish, rockfish, and lingcod and that kind of stuff on these trips. So we did lots of climbing. I probably did the enchantments when I was like 8 or 9 and, climbed Glacier Peak and Olympus and, a lot of paddling and stuff like that. So, that's sort of how I got into the outdoors. And then I lived in the Nisqually Valley, actually, and pretty much spent like all of my youth swimming and walking the woods and kayaking and fishing and that kind of stuff. So the outdoors is pretty important to me and to my family and my current family too. So
nice. Did you start out gear fishing first, and or did fly fishing come first?
Gear fishing was definitely first, and And actually, my introduction to fly fishing was sort of weird because so I grew up gear fishing, throwing, Mepps spinners and bolos and stuff like that. I lived on a small creek which had a lot of fish in it. But I had a classical guitar teacher who was super into fly fishing. He never actually took me fishing, but he gave me a fly rod and one of those reels that you pull the trigger and it automatically winds up the line.
Yeah.
I never fished with it. I just would go stand in the creek and just like cast with it. And that was my first introduction to fly fishing. It wasn't until like, I don't know, maybe 2000 or something like that, that I actually got another fly rod from a coworker. He said that he would teach me how to build a fly rod. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I built my second fly rod, and that's when I actually started fly fishing. So, yeah.
It's really cool. So when you really got into fly fishing, what did that look like? Did you decide one day like, hey, I'm going to go start fly fishing, I'm going to really dig into this, or how did that come about?
Well, so like I said, this guy at my work sort of introduced me to fly fishing through building my first rod. So first it was, getting all the tools and learning how to like tie on guides and, build the blanks and, putting on the epoxy and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, I think it was just sort of exploring the local rivers and stuff around like the Snoqualmie Forks. And I think, the Washington Fly Fishing Forum was a big sort of like, a lot of those guys on there were mentors to me as far as just like a place to go. And they were really willing to share spots and suggestions of places to go fishing. So it was, learned about Rattlesnake Lake and, started going out to the Yakima River and, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's sort of how it sort of got into that.
That's really cool. And that seems like it's almost backwards. I feel like of how a lot of people do. A lot of people, I feel like, get into fishing and then they want to make their own rods and tie their own flies. But it's cool how you came in making your own rod and then really started getting to it. It's an interesting way.
You almost had to earn it in some way.
Yeah, that rod that I had, I love that. It was an old St. Croix, blank and super sort of mid flex action kind of thing. And it was a great way for me to start. You could really sort of feel how the rod, bent when you're casting it and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a great rod to learn on. And unfortunately I dropped it in the Yakima rowing down the river once and lost it. So had to get a new rod after that.
Oh man, that's rough. So you start fishing, you're checking out your local waters, headed over to the Yakima. Where did filming come in and you starting to film your fishing trips?
Filming came in a lot later. Really filming has really only been sort of a recent activity for me. I was always into photography, and my wife was actually also into photography. So we would do a lot of photography stuff. But I think, maybe the last 6 years or something like that has really been when I started to get into it. I think what really sort of sealed the deal was, there became like this intersection between, your photography camera and your video camera, and the technology just sort of merged together. And eventually it was like, well, I've got this camera that can actually take great video, like, why not? And I think before that, it was like, I had one of those little flip video cameras that we would use to film the kids, being young and stuff like that. And I had like one of the old GoPros, like one of the first or second generations given to me. And, the battery lasted like 10 minutes after a while, kind of thing. So it was sort of like, oh, maybe you got like the fish on camera, but like that was it. And it was super shaky and it was super grainy. So it wasn't until like, I think the first camera that I really started filming stuff on was the Nikon D750. Um, and and I think actually before that, I had done maybe like I'd gone out to like Rocky Ford or something like that, and I had gotten a newer GoPro and actually like took some clips and put it together to music. But I feel like my first real film was when I actually to have that Nikon and started taking some films with that, or taking some shots with that. So
did you do any like did you watch any YouTube videos on like how to film or anything along that sort, or did you just kind of were you like I'm just gonna go for it?
um I was just sort of like, I'm just going to do this. And I don't think it was a conscious decision about like, I'm not going to watch YouTube videos, because I probably should have.
Yeah.
But it was more like I just had this stuff and I was out and I just was shooting it. And like, and then I would just upload it to YouTube. Um, so it's definitely been like the last few years that I feel like I've really started to try and like study and like figure out like, okay, what really makes something interesting and compelling, and like what are really good shots, and understanding gear and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, at first it was just sort of me going out and just shooting and seeing what I got.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had an interest in photography. Did you have any interest in like film? Were you into like classic films or anything before, like anything along that sort? I mean, like everyone's, of course, we've all watched like the fly fishing film tour and stuff. But other than that, like, were you like diehard into film or anything?
No, I mean, I like going to the fly fishing film festivals, but I didn't even make those regularly. Like it was just sort of like, oh, hey, I've got that weekend free. Like, if it happened to work out, I would go. So I it wasn't like something that I was even hardcore into. So yeah, it was mostly just photography at first, and just slowly merged over to film.
Nice. That's cool.
So when you're making your films now, like what's your what are you looking for when you're trying to create a film? And I guess I can kind of go back and say, can you walk us through the steps of, say, maybe having an idea of a film you want, planning that out, what it takes filming it, editing, and then coming out with the final product? So where do you start out when you want to make a film?
Yeah. I think I have two styles of films that I tend to work on. One is where I may have like a specific idea going into it. And so if that's the case, for example, I had a friend come to me who survived prostate cancer. And he had this group of guys that he would get together with once a week. And it was sort of like a support group. And once he survived it, he was like, I would love to like teach these guys about fly fishing. So he came to me and he was like, hey, I'd love to make a film about fly fishing. And he had some sort of ideas about it. And so we sort of brainstormed back and forth on sort of like, what would the film be about? And he's a super funny guy. So we kind of went with sort of a comedy angle about fly fishing. And so that one, it was, we wrote up a rough script. We I had a shot list. And so, talked to, which is basically like what shots are super important for me to get to be able to support the story that we had come up with. And then, it's going out with all the gear and shooting and, walking through it. I, rented a lav mic so I could get a good clean recording of him talking. And, I brought tripod and stuff like that. And we just set up and we walked through it. And I think we went out in an afternoon. We went up to the South Fork of the Snoqualmie and just, hiked down there. And in an afternoon, we shot the whole thing. And I was able to go then at home. I usually dump all the footage. I go through and curate the footage and make sure, the shots that I have work, sort of pull out the shots that are super important to me that I like. And I put those all onto a big timeline. And then I start to, put the whole thing together. And this one, like, it was super fast. And I think it was super fast because I had done all the pre-planning on it. And so maybe by the end of that weekend, I had like a pretty solid cut of the whole thing. And, you know, and that was it. And we were pretty much done. I mean, there was obviously tweaking and stuff like that. The other kind of film is sort of the kind of the spray and pray, you know, kind. You're going on a trip. So, for example, I think one of the more popular YouTube videos that I have is a trip that I did to the St. Joe. And I've got a good buddy that also likes to film, and, you know, he brought his drones and cameras and stuff like that. But that one was really more of a, like, you just go and you just film, and, you know, you don't have any sort of plan. You know, you take some pictures of you driving out, you take some pictures of you fishing, you take some pictures of you camping. And then when you get home, you have, you know, 4 days worth of footage that you go through. And, you know, that process is very similar, you know, going through all the footage again, watching it all again. And then you kind of sit there and you're like, okay, well, what are the stories that I could tell? Like, the basic story, of course, is I went fishing, I went to the St. Joe, here's a bunch of shots, I'm done. And I think one of the things that I really try and focus on when I'm doing my films is, like, what is a story that I could tell that isn't just I went fishing? And so I try and break things up, like, oh, hey, there was this funny scene with us, you know, up on this log and catching fish. And, you know, how can I build that into something that's, you know, sort of interesting by itself? So those are sort of the two stories that, or the two sort of types of films I tend to make. One is like sort of pre-planned and I have an idea and I go out and shoot it. And the other one is just sort of like, I'm just going to capture shots of a trip. And when I get home, I'm going to try and find a story that I can pull out of it and sort of share.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that St. Joe trip. I was just going back through YouTube, and I remember seeing that. It's already been 2 years since you made that film, and I remember that was one of the first ones I seen that you had made, and I just the way that you edit, again, telling that story, your shots that you have, I really enjoy that, and I think it's really cool how you put those together, and then seeing that and already doing that, and then now seeing where you're at making these your newer films. I think it's cool to see how you've grown in that process.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, and sometimes I go out on trips and I come home and the footage just, I don't have enough footage to make anything from it. So I've got lots of projects on my folder that have like some random bits of footage that I can't make anything out of. And sometimes I come home and I've got enough to create something.
For sure.
Do you ever, so do you make like, do you ever make like, how do I put it? Like, are you making like short kind of quick videos, or do you like strive for like, I'm trying to make like a good 10-minute video explaining my trip?
It really, again, I think the amount of coverage that I get from a trip really determines the length of the video. Yeah. And it's hard to, and there's sort of like different driving factors, because YouTube has its own set of like algorithms, and what YouTube likes to see isn't necessarily what makes a good film. Yeah. I think. And so there's sometimes a balance between like, okay, if I'm going to put something up for YouTube that I want to perform well, maybe I have to make it a lot faster pace and sort of more exciting, and maybe less narrative to make it successful. Yeah. So I think it kind of comes down to a little bit like, where do I feel like it's going to go? So, you know.
Yeah. Do you think there's like an audience for short videos? Like, do you think like it'd work well on like Instagram or one of those social media platforms, like a quick minute or two video of your trip, or do you try to stick to your like YouTube?
Um, it's tough because um, you know, it takes a lot of time to put films together. And
Yeah.
so if I can harness, YouTube came out with YouTube Shorts. TikTok is also about all these short sort of clips. Instagram also has like their whole Instagram Reels
Yeah.
that they're focusing on. So sometimes I will put together like something sub 1 minute and then try and use it on all three platforms. Um, but yeah, so that I pretty much focus on YouTube, I feel like. And I think that really YouTube and film festivals are sort of what my primary focus is, and everything else is sort of just like extra stuff.
Kind of your driving factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome.
How much do those algorithms go into how you decide to make the video? Like, and what are those algorithms? How have you found that to like trial and error, or is that something that's out there people know about to make your videos popular?
Yeah. So I think it tends to inform a lot of my more recent videos. Um, and that kind of thing, the algorithm, there's a lot of channels that are devoted to just like teaching about like how the YouTube algorithm works. Um, and I feel like I'm sort of conflicted between what I feel like is good um, art and what is good YouTube. And so for me, it's like trying to like sort of like, I'm on that border between like trying to make art that I like and also make videos that will work well on YouTube. Um, Everybody has people on YouTube have short attention spans, and so things like quick edits um, and things that change a lot really affect like how long people watch your video. People scroll through um, YouTube on their phones, and there's so many different things competing for attention. So if you're focusing on YouTube, like you got to keep the viewer hooked for a long period of time. And so one of the things some of the factors that I'm aware of that I work on are, how long can I keep the viewer watching it? So anything sort of over like 60%, if they watch that much of the video, is usually a good sign that YouTube will be like, okay, I'll continue to push this video out to people. And then also on top of that is figuring out what sort of thumbnails that you use and what kind of titles are super important. So, and those things are, click-through rates and that sort of thing. So I think one of the things that I've tried to be more conscientious about now is when I'm out shooting a film, I'm also thinking in the back of my head, like what photo would work really well for a YouTube thumbnail. Like what would get people to click on it if they're scrolling through the feed. Whereas before, I think I would sort of just like pick a frame from the video and be like, this seems like interesting, or this has got a fish picture or something like that, and I would drop that on it. I now try and spend also time thinking about like, okay, like what is super cool that's happening? Like, can I set something up, on the trip and actually take like a really good photo and use that for the video? And I'll even do like, if I'm making thumbnails, I'll make 3 thumbnails nowadays, and then I'll try and rotate through them if I don't like how well a video is performing as far as a click-through rate. I'll put one in and leave it in there for a day, and if it's lower than I like, I'll swap it out to another one. And then if none of them work, I'll like go back to the drawing board and try and find something else and try and swap that in there. So it's sort of funny because it's like that part of it isn't even really have anything to do with the film per se, but it's just to get people to click on it, to watch it, and then hopefully the editing and the story will keep people engaged in the video.
I think that's really cool. I didn't know there was that much of a science kind of that goes behind it. I mean, I've done some videos and throw them up on YouTube, but that's been my extent, is I just like a rough edit and publish. And I had never really considered all those type of things. Multiple thumbnails. That's something I'd never even heard of. I like that idea, and just following algorithms, looking at your analytics and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty cool.
And to add on to that, it's the world that we're living in, and how fast people can switch through like apps and go from Facebook to YouTube to Instagram, and how we're all over the place. It can, even I find myself, it's hard to like really draw me into something unless it's like boom right in your face, has a good hook, and then I'll continue to watch it. But yeah, you're in a tough world of videos because everyone is trying to make the same video that you are and get the same attention from everyone doing the same thing. They're app surfing. So yeah, props to you, Mark. That's impressive, and that's really interesting to see how it's all done.
So would you say that YouTube is your kind of your biggest platform, the platform you spend most of your time on for your films?
Yes. That's definitely where majority of my content goes to. I was on Vimeo for a while and had subscribed to their like pro plan, but like I don't feel YouTube just has the most people and really has the most I think for people starting out, like if you just have the biggest audience on YouTube, and again, like things like TikTok and Instagram, like I'm not really an expert of those, and I'm not even really an expert of YouTube, but I think YouTube is just for me, it seems like it's the best potential to reaching audience than sort of the other platforms. And like maybe if I had content that was like really sort of, if I focused on really short content, then maybe there would be other platforms like TikTok and Instagram that would be better. But having that option to have longer form content is sort of important to me, and not being pigeonholed into just like short content. So
gotcha. So talking about your YouTube videos, Mark, and I guess your films and videos in general, what type of like fly fishing film does it seem most people want to watch? They want to watch a bunch of shots of you just catching fish all the time, or do you have a lot of people that want to see a lot of your drone footage, or do you have just like your B-roll shots that are popular? What do you find that people tend to really get drawn to?
I think people really love sort of love watching trip videos. And I think trip videos that are sort of like on people's bucket lists. I kind of did a survey on one of the big fly fishing groups on Facebook, and I asked people like, what are you looking for when you go to watch fly fishing videos on YouTube? And there's basically like three things that people look for when they're researching stuff on YouTube. And one is either educational content, how to, fish with an indicator, how to Euro nymph, how to trout spay. The next thing is like research on locations. And so like, I'm going to the Missouri River, like I'm going to go watch a bunch of videos on that, or I'm going to go to the St. Joe River, and I'm going to go watch a bunch of videos on that. And then like sort of the third area is sort of like stoke, like just like, beautiful vistas, beautiful fishing areas and rivers, people catching really big fish, something interesting that's happening, something crazy that's happening, like a shark eating their tuna or something like that. And so like, I think the sweet spot is if you can kind of combine all that stuff together, because then you're sort of hitting a bigger audience. But for me and the content that I do, I think it's really the sweet spot for me is like trip videos, and then just like great shots of all that stuff happening. So I think that's the audience that sort of likes what I do.
Gotcha.
So I got a question. We're kind of going to turn the corner a little bit, but say I'm a brand new person. I fly fished a little bit, but I was like, man, I want to share where I'm going. What's like the starter kit, or what was your starter kit for someone that's just starting to try to get into filming?
Yeah. I think the biggest, the biggest criteria for people that are getting into it should be something that's easy to use. And I think that comes down to using things that are waterproof and using things that are small. And so that's like GoPros or action cams, and that's like your phone. And these days I kind of lean more towards my phone over GoPros, just because phones have come such a long way as far as quality of the content that they take. And then when you get home, you can do a lot of editing on your phone, and you can just upload it right from your phone. So it's really easy to just like do things on your phone. Like I know a friend of mine that I met through YouTube, Fly Fish Dan. He's got a great channel. He started, which is sort of frustrating, but he started after me, and he's blown up to like 5,000 subscribers, and I think like maybe over the last like year and a half or something like that. And he uses his phone. That's all he uses. He uses a drone as well, I guess. But for the longest time, he just uses his phone, and he just, he puts it on he's got a chest harness that he made for it, and he holds it out and he talks to the camera, and he takes all his footage, and he just uses his phone. So my advice to people that kind of want to get into this would be like, pick something easy. And I think most people, unless you have like a really old phone, most people have phones that can take great video, and like the newer phones are waterproof, so you can stick them underwater and get pictures underwater and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so I think that's a great way for people to sort of start getting into it. And then, if they enjoy that and they enjoy editing stuff and they want to take it a step further, I think, taking a look at, DSLRs and that kind of thing is certainly a way to go. But like for people just starting out and want to get an idea of it, I say start with your smartphone if it does decent, or start with a GoPro or something like that.
Yeah. If someone was like, let's go to the next step. What if someone's like ready to make that leap to a DSLR camera? What's like one you'd recommend?
I'm sort of weird when I'll do a lot of research on something I'm going to buy, like whether it's a fly rod or a camera or something like that. And then as soon as I buy it, I don't really pay attention anymore to like camera types.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it's hard to avoid them when you're on YouTube and you're looking up like film, guys and stuff like that. So you'll see reviews, but I went used for the first camera that I got that was sort of dedicated for video. Yeah. And I used the Panasonic Gh5. It's a micro four thirds camera, so it's a little bit smaller, and the lenses are a little bit smaller, which means that like when you're packing everything with you on your back, it really helps to sort of shave off any sort of weight that you can. Mm-hmm. But there's some, I would say like any of the major camera companies out there are going to have great cameras. We do not live in an age, or we live in an age where there are so many amazing options out there. And, you don't have to buy new. You can buy a couple of years old and get amazing quality cameras. So I know filmmakers, like some of the top filmmakers out there, for example, Gilbert Rowley from I think either Capture Media or Capture Adventure Media. He pretty much has like one or two films always in the IF4 Fly Fishing Film Festival. And I know he shoots on a Panasonic Gh5. I think the Jensens, Dave and Amelia Jensen, they also, I believe, still shoot on a Panasonic Gh5, and it's an old camera. I mean, old 3 or 4 years or something like that. So it's not exactly a new one, but it takes great, video. So people don't need to look for the newest and greatest out there.
Yeah. I personally would find it hard to buy like a really nice like Nikon and then knowing that I'm going to put it in my drift boat or something. There's that chance that I could drop it while I'm filming my friend, or I'm getting out to like wade across something and I'm trying to film someone and I just go in and I ruin like $1,000 camera. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm starting to get into it. I'm like nowhere near where you guys are or anything, but we just went with like a $400 camera, just like the simplest video that you could get. Because I was like, Eric and me and Eric were thinking about doing it, and I'm like, Eric, we're not buying this nice a camera. I fall all the time. I am not taking this across the river. So
yeah, that's probably smart, and I think that's too where like the whole GoPros and phones, that are waterproof really come in, because if you're afraid of, dropping your expensive camera in the water, you're not gonna take it out as often.
yeah.
And I feel like for me, that's one thing that I've tried to sort of slim down. I think when I first got into it, I was like, oh, I need, this camera, and I need these lenses, and I need this gimbal, and I need drones and whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm packing it all into my waterproof bags and everything. But then it's such a pain to get stuff out. And then I end up just like being lazy out there and being like, I'm not going to bother getting out the, the big camera. I'm not going to bother getting out the gimbal, because it's just a pain, to dig through everything and get everything out.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, it's trying to slim down and focus on like what make it really easy for me to like get my camera out when I want it, and not to be a production and not have that get in the way. And I think for a lot of people, like, yeah, you buy like a really nice camera, probably the nicest camera you've bought in your life, and then suddenly you're surrounded by water and you're afraid that you're going to drop it or whatever in the water. And so you're like, I'm only going to take it out when I'm like anchored up and there's like a nice gravel bank, next to me, and all this kind of stuff. I totally get that. So I think going with waterproof options is a good way to sort of start. And the newest GoPros, or even the last few GoPros, just they take great video. So
it's amazing to see how good of photos and like videos, the iPhones and like Samsungs can take too.
Yep.
I mean, some of them are nicer than some of the like lower end cameras. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what is your setup right now, and how do you want to grow your film setup in the future, or do you want to grow from what you have now?
Yeah. So I think my sort of like day kit that I take with me, I take my Panasonic Gh5. I have a sort of all around zoom lens on it, like I think it's a 15 to 35 or something like that. And then I usually have a couple other lenses with me that I never use, but I always take them because I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to use them or want them, but I almost never use them. I have a Insta360 camera that I take with me that can take 360-degree video. That sort of replaced GoPros for me, or at least for now, it sort of replaced GoPros. So I've been using that as sort of an action cam, either sticking it on my head or attaching it to the boat. I think one of the cool things about the Insta360 cameras is that they have this cool technology where they'll erase the selfie stick. So you can extend it for a certain whatever length the stick is, and then it erases the stick so that when you watch the video back, it looks like you've got like a little drone that's sort of hovering, 5-6 feet away from you. So you can get some kind of cool shots with it that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So some sort of action cam. I take a drone. I feel like I fly that probably like 30% of the time that I go out on on a day trip or something like that, but I always take it with me. I currently use the DJI Air 2S, which is a pretty new version of that drone, but I had the DJI Air for a long time. And again, I got those because they're sort of the smaller versions of some of their drones. They, which again is like, we have to carry the stuff on our back or in our boats, and trying to shave off any sort of weight and that kind of thing is sort of important. And then sometimes I bring a gimbal with me. And a gimbal is basically, you know, a device that you stick your camera on that helps sort of smooth out the shakiness. And so you can get some really cool sort of smooth footage with it. But I also don't use that all the time either. I'll take it with me, but I don't always use it. So that's probably my main setup that I take with me. And then I think a lot of the time I bring a tripod as well. And I feel like I'm trying to use that a lot more because I just really love sort of stable locked off shots. And I watch a lot of films where people use that and I'm like, why don't I do this more? Why don't I take more sort of locked off and non-handheld shots? But so that's sort of my day kit.
That's cool.
Gotcha. So how do you, is that something that you want to grow in the future, or do you like where you're at now and that's where you're going to stay?
Let's see. I think if anything, the things that I would add to my kit are things that would either make my camera more waterproof. So I've looked at like, there's a company called Outtex, and they make this sort of soft waterproof housing that you can attach to your camera. And you can attach some of the domes, the optical domes, which allow you to get those cool sort of half and half over under shots in the water. So you can see both like a release and you can see the angler at the same time. I think, if I had expendable money, I would probably sell my current gimbal and get a lighter gimbal. But, and again, like the main focus being like trying to get things as small and as light as possible, just to make it less of a hassle to carry. And other than that, I mean, you know, maybe a better lens at some point. But I'm pretty happy with the setup I have. And so it's really more about like, can I get better, you know, more waterproof or I guess lighter is really my sort of two things that I look for now.
Gotcha.
Sweet.
So kind of going from your camera side and your kit side, what does your editing consist of? What kind of software do you use? Did you start out using a different type of software? Do you use something different now? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So the first, I would say my first real film that I did, I used iMovie at first. And the first draft of that was all done in iMovie. But I quickly, even partway through that project, like I switched over to Adobe Premiere. And so I use a Mac at home for work and personal stuff. And so I think if I were buying video editing software, I would probably go with Final Cut Pro because it's native to the Mac. But through work, I have a subscription to Adobe, and so I have access to all of their software. So that's why I use Adobe Premiere. I think if somebody were getting into it and they thought, maybe I would get into the field of video editing and that kind of thing, Adobe Premiere is pretty much like the standard. There's, you know, Adobe Premiere is sort of the big standard. Final Cut Pro for people on Macs. There's a free version called DaVinci Resolve, which a lot of people are using, and it is pretty sort of up and coming. And then I think for people that are, I would say those are sort of professional to like, pro user level software. I think people that are just wanting to get into it and see if they even just like doing this kind of thing, like iMovie is great. Filmora is another great one. I think that one's fairly inexpensive. I think it's like under $100, and it can probably do pretty much anything that you really want to do. Yeah, so that's the editing software that I use. I use a little bit of Adobe After Effects for there's some cool like 3D tracking stuff that it can do, where it can sort of figure out different planes in your video. And so you can put text and that kind of stuff on top of it, and it will like alter the text so that it makes the text feel like it lives within your video. So as your shot might like rotate, like if you're doing a big drone shot and it's rotating around a mountain or something like that, you can put the text in there and it'll track that text and the motion, and it will change it so it looks like it sort of lives in that video. But I used such a teeny tiny percentage of After Effects. It pretty much is for a little bit of of that 3D tracking of text and that kind of stuff. But those are the two programs that I mostly use.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of bouncing around programs and just seeing which ones worked and didn't work.
Yeah, and it requires a good a healthy computer to be able to run all that stuff, because you're going to have Adobe Premiere open, and then maybe you want to jump over to After Effects to add that some effects in or something like that, and so you have both of those open, and then maybe you were editing a photo in Photoshop or Lightroom or something like that, so you have that open as well. If you're going that route, you definitely need a computer that's definitely healthy. If you're using stuff like iMovie and probably Filmora, you can probably get away with a little less strong computer.
Yeah.
When I was at Central, I was taking some video editing classes and like learning how to use Adobe Premiere, and I just barely scratched the surface with that. Like Photoshop and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'd have a couple things up at the same time. And even on the school Mac computers, if you had just a couple things open, everything would crash, and hopefully you had everything saved. And if you didn't have everything saved, good luck, you had to restart all over again. So I definitely get what you're saying there.
Yeah, totally.
Well, and one more thing is the cool thing about like iMovie is you can do it right off. If you have an iPhone, you can do it right off your iPhone too, which makes it easy to take the video and then, crop and cut to where you want it. But the quality, like what you're talking about with like Adobe and stuff, isn't there when you're just pulling on your phone, slapping them in together. Sometimes I found when I was doing iMovie, the transitions were weird. Like even if you like tried to do a really smooth transition, it looked like it was like building blocks, like it just slapped to the next, screen or picture, right. And you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted for my viewers to see.
Yeah, I think like I've done some, I'll go on a trip and I just have some video clips on my phone and try and edit something on my phone, and I think the main thing is just like it's not very exact, because you're using your finger to like drag the clips around and cut them and drag the transitions in, and you're not quite sure, at least I'm never quite sure, like, can it even do what I want it to do? Yeah. So then I'm like, well, is this how this transition is supposed to work? And so it's great for like trimming stuff down and creating a quick video. But I think when you try and get super specific, it's just, at least it's hard for me to use my finger to like drag the cut, just to the right spot or something like that.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Mark, my videos on YouTube would not meet the algorithm. So
the algorithm, yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I talk a lot with friends about YouTube and the algorithm, and it's interesting because there's all sorts of styles of people making videos out there and that are successful. There's a guy who I think his channel is Drew Looking Fishy. And he's got a lot of followers all over the place on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. And his sort of method of taking videos is he's got some sort of action cam or phone or something like that. He may walk down to a stream, and as he's going down, he'll, have a few comments, and then he just fishes for like half an hour. And then he doesn't say anything. He just fishes. He catches fish after fish after fish. And then maybe he'll have like a little outro of like, well, off to the next spot. And he'll get, 20, 30,000 views on stuff or whatever, which is totally not what what people would say like you should do with the algorithm. But there's obviously an audience for it. And so like you may say like, oh, my videos will never, aren't good for the algorithm, but you never know if people find them, and there may be a audience out there that really want Keaton style videos. So.
Yeah. the iMovie videos. Just, yeah.
All 5 of Keaton's viewers.
Yeah. All
That's
5.
right.
My little fan club. I shout out to you guys, So.
Me, your mom, your dad, my girlfriend, and your sister.
Occasionally my grandma, if she can get to YouTube. So.
That's right.
No. And one thing that you kind of talked about, everyone's kind of got a different video. I noticed like you can see some people set it up to like into a movie, and then you got your vlogs, and then you got your people that do their vlogs at the beginning, and then it's like you were saying, like they're fishing, for the whole video. And so I think everyone, and I find interest in different people doing all of those things. So yeah, it is pretty interesting how, I might find this video interesting. This guy's doing the same exact thing as this guy, but I just don't like the way he's laying it out, so I'm not going to watch it. So,
yep. Yeah, for sure.
So is this something that you eventually want to maybe make into a full-time job if it ever went there? Or is this just something you want to keep kind of doing on the side from your day job?
I mean, if I could, that would be pretty cool to be able to go around and make your own videos. Yeah. I think the thing that I wouldn't want to do full time is make videos for other people. I don't mind. It's sort of fun to do a project where like, I shoot a video for a company or something like that. But like, if that's what I was doing for a living, I don't think I would want to do that. I'd have to hustle pretty hard to be able to make, as much money as I make now. So I think the dream would be like, could I go on fishing trips and film my fishing trips and make a living from that? Like that would be amazing. I think some of the guys that I sort of look up to that, seem like they're down that path are like Wildfly Productions, Scotty. His videos are pretty much him and his buddies, doing these sweet trips that everybody would love to go do. But they also have a great cinematic aspect and great storytelling along with it. And so, Tight Loops Media, Chase and Amy Barty, I think, they make some great films that I would love to be able to do. So for me, it'd be sweet if I could, get paid to be like, okay, I'm going to go do some crazy trip up into Alaska or up into, Canada or, South America or something like that. And I just get to make the film and produce whatever I want. And there's nobody telling me like, oh, well, you got to have like we got to have the sponsor section here. And then we have to have this like vlog section here. And, I just want to be able to do my own thing and be able to have fun sort of doing that. That would be pretty cool. But I bet that would be pretty hard to do.
Do you ever collaborate with any of those other people you've brought up? I know you brought up like Wildfly, you brought up the Jensens. Like, do you talk to other filmmakers, video creators?
Yeah, the ones that'll talk with me. Like Dan, with Flyfish Dan, like we've become really good friends, just through YouTube, and we've been going on trips and stuff like that. So we definitely sort of collaborate on things together and shoot videos back and forth. And then I've reached out to lots of different people sort of through Facebook or YouTube or that kind of stuff. Dave Jensen, I've had conversations with and asked him about, what gear they're using and how they do it, and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. And so he's been really nice to, talk with me as well. I've never had an opportunity to chat with Scotty from Wildfly, but I mean, I would always be up for some sort of collaboration there. But there's other people that are sort of more in my realm of like, sub 10,000 subscriber kind of people that I chat with. And I've actually started a Facebook group that's sort of aimed at people, creatives in fishing, just to try and, connect people together, because it's kind of lonely sometimes when you're just sort of like a solo creator and you're out there taking videos and that kind of stuff. And you kind of like, well, what, I think taking fly fishing films is sort of its own subgenre of filmmaking. And there's challenges that occur in our genre of filmmaking that, other people don't have to deal with. Like, how do I carry all my stuff plus all my fishing gear and water bottles and lunches and flies and rods and everything like that? Like, I can't take like lights and multiple cameras and stuff like that because I can't carry it all. So what do people do? But yeah, I mean, I've reached out to different people that I like, and sort of, we try and help each other out, ask people to critique our films and questions on what they're doing and that kind of stuff.
The real question is, how do you convince your friends to come out and take video of you fly fishing? That's the problem I'm trying to solve, is like, yeah, come with me, let's go fly fishing. I'm gonna bring a camera and I want you to stand on this riverbank while I go upstream and try to hook this trout. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm not going fishing with this guy anymore.
But yeah, I think it really helps to have people that are into filmmaking as well. So I've got a good friend, Brian. He goes on most of my trips with me, and he's really into making films as well. So like on the St. Joe trip, the fishing was so good that it was easy to sort of put down the fly rod, and so we just would alternate. We'd come to a hole and I'd give him the camera, and he'd shoot me, and then I'd catch a couple fish, and then we'd swap. Sometimes when we go like on a slow day on the Yak or something like that, it's kind of like everybody's fishing and nobody's filming because nobody's catching fish or something like that. So yeah, so it helps to have people that are into making films.
Gotcha. All those slow days on the Yak, that kind of sounds like all of Keaton's guided trips, right, Keaton?
Dang, why you gotta do that, Kyle?
Oh man. So where can someone find your videos, Mark, if they want to go check out your stuff, whether that be your videos or even some of your other content that you have out there?
I think the best place to go is probably to my YouTube channel. You can find it at The Fly Fishing Filmmaker. And if you search that in YouTube or Instagram, or even Facebook, like I'm there as that, so people can find me there.
Gotcha. So what's the best advice that you could give to your younger self if you could go back and talk to yourself when you first start getting into filmmaking? What's one piece of advice you would tell yourself?
I would probably tell myself not to buy as much gear. I think I would say, buy the DSLR, get the one lens, and leave it at that. And then go fish, go film, and figure out like, what is it that when you're out there that you're like, ooh, I really wish I had that. Instead of like going out and be like, oh, I need this piece of gear, I need this piece of gear, I need this piece of gear. And then you get out there and you don't end up using all of it. I think that would be the big thing. And then I would say, take more trips. I wish when I was younger and I didn't have a family and I wasn't as responsible, that I was into fly fishing and making films. Because I think now it's really tough having a family and having lots of obligations, to be able to get out and do trips, day trips, let alone like a week-long trip, somewhere. So I think I would have told myself to take advantage of the lack of responsibilities and really really enjoy myself and do that instead of the waste of time things that I did when I was younger.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, is there anything else that you think that is important to add, or, from fishing, from your filmmaking? I mean, anything that you just want to say? Yeah.
I think there is, I think there's, for people that are getting into it and enjoy it and want to get more exposure, I think like understanding like what the sort of the fly fishing sort of film industry looks like. There's I wish I had known this when I was getting into this, but like knowing how to get onto Orvis's Friday roundup of videos and getting into Mid-Current's newsletter, and getting onto Moldy Chum, and getting into the fly fishing film festivals. I think that I feel like it's a little bit of that information isn't easy to find out there. And so it's sort of like over time you kind of build up this like, oh, I happen to get like Phil Monahan's email and now I can send him these things, or I know Marshall at Midcurrent now, and so I can send him these things. And I feel like when you get into it, like nobody's like, hey, if you want to try and get onto Orvis's Friday Film Festival, send him an email and here's a place to do it. So I think if anybody's out there and is interested in that sort of thing, feel free to hit me up, on social media somewhere, and I'm happy to share like some of the ways that I try and get exposed, sort of in the general fly fishing film industry. And I think too that I think there's sort of this idea that like you have to be this 100,000 of subscribers to get sponsors and that kind of stuff. And I think that that's not true. Like I don't even have 1,000 subscribers, but on my last trip I was able to get sponsored by Watermaster and Drift and Xbed. And I think I wouldn't have really thought that was possible where I am. And so I think for people out there that are looking to get into this, that if you are telling good stories, and you are making good films, there's lots of companies out there that are looking for people to help sell their products or sponsor films or that kind of thing. So don't think just because you just got into this, if you're making good stuff and telling good stories, there's people out there looking for your help. So
cool.
So we let people know that you were coming on, Mark. We had them reach out to us and ask any questions that they had. And Steve wanted to know, what are some of your favorite filmmakers, both fishing and non-fishing? I know you kind of talked about some of your collaborators, some other people making these fly fishing films. Who do you look up to maybe outside of the industry?
I'll tell you, I think as far as like, I kind of really like documentary filmmakers. And I think for me, trying to find the story in my films is one of the things that I try the hardest at. Sometimes I don't find it, but so I think, Mark Bone is he's a YouTuber as well as a documentary filmmaker. And I just really love the aesthetics that he gets in his films. And I really like, I really like documentary because I sometimes I feel like that's kind of like what fly fishing films are. It's sort of like a little documentary about our trips and things like that. So I sort of resonate with documentary filmmakers. So he's one that I really like. Who else do I really like? I mean, I've always been a big fan of like Ken Burns. His documentaries are super awesome. But there's so many filmmakers that that I really like editing styles. Quentin Tarantino always has super interesting stuff. So I don't know. I don't really have like really specific filmmakers that I would say like, oh, I wish I could be this person. But I think those are probably some of the filmmakers that I like.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in the industry specifically that you like?
Yeah, I think there's two people that I really love their stuff. I think the first one is Gilbert Rowley, and his stuff is just so well shot and so clean, and the footage just looks so great. And then the other one are, is Tight Loops Media, Chase and Amy. I just really love, again, like there's like Chase came from he came from film school. And so I think his films have like a really sort of cinematic feel to it. So I think one of their latest films that they put out was Big Land, and that was their trip up to, where was it, like Northern Ontario or something like that, looking for like huge brookies. And that film is just, it's like super beautiful. And the stories that they tell and the art that they both produce, they're both fantastic artists. Amy does a lot of photography and drawing and painting, and Chase also does a lot of painting and stuff like that. So they're both amazing artists. And then I think the third filmmaker that I really love in the fly fishing industry is Rolf Nylander. He's from I don't know, Sweden maybe. And I feel like people sort of the Scandi philosophy over there is so amazing. Like it's so much more laid back than I feel like Americans. Like if you watch a lot of YouTubers and people making films, they're sort of like this really like, sort of high tempo, aggressive, like, oh, we're after like big fish, and and like it's really just like a lot of shots of that kind of stuff. And if you watch Rolf's stuff, like it's really like these stories about him and his friends going out and just like really focusing on these little aspects of life. And it's not about always catching the big fish. It's also about like not getting the fish and how his friends catch more fish than he does. And they have sort of this very sort of humble attitude in their, at least that come through their films. So I really sort of resonate with sort of that, just like, I'm not the best fisherman, and I'm not, I don't always catch the biggest fish, and I don't always get the best shots, and, kind of thing. Yeah, so I really love his work.
Is Rolf the one that did the video in Japan, catching those trout like out of Tokyo, not too far out of Tokyo?
Yes. Yep. I think it was Shaku Hunters.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. He's got a lot of amazing stuff. And I always like, I think I was first introduced to the Field Coffee Diaries or something like that. It's like 4 or 5 different videos that I think he made into a film at some point, but I always go back at least once or twice a year and just watch those and try and pick apart like how he tells a story. Yeah, I wish I could do the same thing.
That's awesome.
So we had another question too. I mean, you covered mostly like the camera gear and stuff, but like for dry bags and just to carry your equipment, what are you using?
Yeah, so I use a lot of waterproof bags from Xped. And I sort of have a couple different styles that I use. So one is if I'm doing lots of walk and wade, I'll use roll top backpacks. And they're not fly fishing specific, like, Drift makes one and it's got rod tube holders on the outside and sort of more attachments and that kind of stuff. So these backpacks are just, sort of your everyday outdoor, super tough, dry backpacks. I also have a a waterproof duffel that I use, and that's a little bit nicer because with the roll top bags, you generally have to access everything through the top. So, if you've got stuff on the bottom, you have to take everything out in order to get it. So when I'm in my boat, I like to use the duffel bag because you open it up and then you can access more of your gear and you don't have to like wade through everything to get through it. And then inside of that, I like to have sort of dividers. So like for cables and extra SIM cards and lenses and stuff like that, I've got some small padded containers. And I think that really helps like cut down on clutter. If I were just to throw all that stuff into my bag, then I'm pulling out a lens individually and like putting it on my seat of my pontoon bag. Like I'm going to lose that or I'm going to drop that. So having like a bag that you have all those little things in that you can just pull out to get out of the way is really helpful. And then for my camera, I have, they sell, this is really old bag, but it's from Lowe, and it's a chest harness. It's for like, you're going to go hiking and you want your camera sort of sitting on your chest that you can unzip and get access to. And I use that because I can open up my backpack and I can open up that chest harness and I can grab and pull the camera directly straight out. I don't have to pull it and then like pull the bag out and then open the bag and then pull it out. Like everything is vertical so I can easily access it. So that's sort of how I package that stuff. And I think if I'm on a boat, if I'm on my pontoon, like I tie everything in so that if I flip, my bag's not floating away. So that's sort of what
Gotcha.
That's good info.
Well, Keaton, you want to pull us into the rapid fire round?
All right, it's coming at you. Here we go, Mark. All right, what's your what's your favorite fish?
I'd have to say West Slope cutthroat.
Beautiful.
What is your dream destination to fish at?
Well, I've got a lot. I think the most exotic location would be going to fish for golden dorado down in Bolivia. I think those things look so mean, and I've seen so many cool videos of them eating bait fish and stuff in the river. So I think that would be high on my list.
What about domestic?
Alaska mice, Kanatuck or something like that, and throwing mice in the side channels would be awesome.
Heck yeah, that's watching a trout eat a mammal is pretty incredible.
It's a different side of them in some sense. So
yep.
All right, here's another one for you, Mark. You're going to the river and you're going on a float and you're bringing out your favorite meal and drink. What is it?
Favorite or what I always take with me?
Your go-to or your favorite, either one.
So I'll say my go-to is probably a triple peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Nice.
And probably Coke would be what I take with me on my trips.
Nice. Now, what music are you listening to? What's your pump up jam when you're driving to the river?
So I really love bluegrass music, and I play bluegrass music. So if I'm with people that enjoy it, I'll listen to that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
You're headed out the door and you're going on a fishing trip. What's the first thing you're going to grab when you're headed out the door?
My rod.
Your rod.
What rod are you grabbing? Well,
I'm probably grabbing my Sage One 5-weight.
All right. Nice. Something you wish you knew when you started, whether that be in filming or that just be in fishing in general.
That I probably don't need to buy so many flies. I have so many flies that I've bought on trips and then never use. And like, for example, like my yak box could be so slimmed down and just be like probably, 4 or 5 patterns or something like that. But I bring everything because it's the just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have that bluing, pale morning, March brown stonefly that pops off that you don't have any of, and you have 2 patterns of it at home, and you don't have it with you that one day.
Exactly. Well, it's. I feel like it's the damselfly or the dragonfly dry, flies that I have in my box that I'm like, I've never thrown these before. Why do I carry these around? But just in case I run into a situation where fish are eating dragonflies, like I want to be prepared.
For sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we like to end our podcast with a fishing story of any kind. So let's hear your best fishing story.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think my best fishing story is getting to go and fish with the guys at Rio. There was I think one of my first films, probably the first real film that I did. I entered it in Rio's amateur fly fishing film contest thing. And ended up winning the grand prize for that. And so they flew me out for 4 days to go fishing with them.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I got to fish with Simon Gosworth, and on the Henry's Fork. And he's standing up on the bank, like, spotting fish for me, telling me to like, cast a little bit up and see this piece of seaweed that's coming down here at like 9 o'clock. Like, okay, the fish is just below there. And so, we spent like hours on the Henry's Fork and he's standing up there like spotting fish for me. So that experience was probably one of my favorite fishing experiences.
That is awesome.
Super cool. What movie was that, or film, if people want to watch that movie?
That one's called Tenkara Kid.
Gotcha.
And that it was really my daughter that sort of inspired me to really start trying to make films. And I think once I won this contest, that was sort of the like confirmation that I needed, that like, okay, I actually can, make something that people like. And so that sort of spawned all the rest of everything else. So, it sort of goes back to Rio and their contests.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, you ready for the outro?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. Make sure to check out our website, www.theyoungguidespodcast.com. You can check out our podcast there and check out about our guests and any other information you might have. You can ask us questions there. We want to thank Mark for coming on today. Today was it's a little change in pace from our normal podcasts, and we hope you guys enjoy this, even if you're filmmakers or not filmmakers. Once again, thanks for listening to us. We really appreciate it. And I'm Keaton, and
I'm Kyle. And one thing I wanted to speak on too right at the end is we're having Mark on here, and I've corresponded with Mark and seen his videos and his films and his presence on social media for the last few years, and it's really cool. I remember watching his this film that won in the Rio, the Tenkara Kid, and watching his films throughout and his progression throughout has been really cool to watch, and it's kind of an honor to have you on here, Mark, to talk about your filmmaking.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun to talk about it, and this is my first podcast, so that's pretty cool.
Setting the bar low.
Well, we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate everyone that listens and participates and gets on our podcast. Mark, Nick, Kylie, and you, even you, Kyle. So we really appreciate everything that everyone's doing for us and the support that we're getting over these last few weeks from people like you guys. And I hope you know we're really grateful for that. So thank you again for listening to this episode, and we hope to catch you on the next one.